As we discussed in the previous video, there are several big questions we need to address in order to reach our ultimate goal, such as, how did we get here? What happens after death? Is there a creator or is chance our creator? And what are we here for? We start by addressing the topic of death. This is an important issue, because throughout our lives we strive to achieve certain goals. The question is whether all we have worked for will be lost when we die, or whether it will remain and influence an afterlife. Finding answers to these questions will have a significant impact on determining our goals during this life. We approach the topic first from a scientific perspective, namely from the findings of Pim van Lommel, the well-known cardiologist and author of the book Consciousness Beyond Life. Pim van Lommel explains that around 1970, techniques were developed to bring patients who had suffered a cardiac arrest back to life, such as resuscitation. As a student, Pim van Lommel witnessed for the first time a patient being revived after a cardiac arrest. He recalls that everyone was happy and relieved, except for the patient himself. He was very emotional and spoke about a beautiful landscape with colors, lights and music that he had to leave behind when he returned to his body. This naturally amazed van Lommel, because during his studies he had learned that this was impossible. People who experience a cardiac arrest are clinically dead. How could someone still experience consciousness? Years later, van Lommel began asking patients who had survived a cardiac arrest whether they remembered anything from the period they were unconscious. He spoke to 50 people, and to his surprise, 12 of them shared a deeply emotional near-death experience, or NDE. According to van Lommel, NDEs raise mind-boggling questions about our current understanding of consciousness and its relationship to the function of the brain. During these near-death experiences, people even reported an enhanced and very clear state of consciousness. They experienced logical thought process during the period of total cessation of blood flow to the brain. Traditionally, it's still believed that consciousness is caused or produced by large groups of neurons or neural networks, and that consciousness is therefore located solely in the brain. However, this remains an unproven hypothesis and a concept that now needs to be questioned. Before delving deeper into van Lommel's research, we first need to understand what an NDE is. Van Lommel describes an NDE as the reported memory of a period of expanded consciousness with universal elements. The first element is an out-of-body experience. People, for example, see their own resuscitation from above, or the car accident, as though they are in a drone. They see their body lying there, but still feel complete, with some form of body, emotions and thoughts. They have a sense of being dead, but no longer feel the pain of their body. Sometimes they enter a dark space, which can be frightening, and then they see a point of light to which they are drawn, often referred to as a tunnel experience. They then enter another world, a non-earthly reality, but with characteristics similar to Earth, such as beautiful landscapes, colors and music. People describe what they see as something of a different order than what we know on Earth, something that cannot be known here. Further, people often talk about a light, a feeling of unconditional love and acceptance. Some describe encounters with angels or holy beings. They meet deceased loved ones, sometimes ones they didn't even know had passed away. Often there is a live review, where they feel connected to everything that has happened in the past. They describe that every act, every word, and even every thought in life is preserved, and it affects others. During this live review, they feel completely connected to everyone from their past. When people are unconscious for just 2 minutes, they can often speak for a week about what they experienced during that review. They describe experiencing everything simultaneously. The experience is beyond time and space. Sometimes people also have a vision of their future life. Next, they often describe reaching a boundary, like a wall, a cloud or mist. They know that if I cross this, I won't come back. Then they are told that it is not their time yet, and that they must return to their body. There is then a conscious return to the body, which is often very painful for people. These are the elements commonly described, but not everyone has all of these elements. In the description of this video, I will add links to websites where people share their own NDE stories. An essential part of NDEs is that these experiences are transformative. People become completely different afterwards. The fear of death disappears. They've gained insight into what is important in life. Outer appearances, for example, are no longer important to them. There's a feeling that everything is connected. People place much more value on how they relate to others, how they treat others. After an NDE, people also often experience heightened intuitive sensitivity. Van Lommel mentions that it is very difficult for people to accept and integrate such an experience. This process can take 5, 10, 20, or even 30 years. Part of the problem is that these people are often not believed and find it difficult to share their story. Research shows that 85% of doctors, 50% of psychiatrists, and 30% of nurses reacted negatively to the stories of people with an NDE. Furthermore, family, friends, and partners often dismiss it as nonsense. 70% eventually goes through a divorce because their partner says, "You're not the person I married anymore." The first 5 or 10 years, or even longer, are a period of depression, loneliness, and feelings of homesickness. Many people say nothing about it for 50 years. Let's return to Van Lommel's research. In 1988, he started a study at 10 Dutch hospitals. Anyone who had been revived after cardiac arrest was asked about their experience. It turned out that 18% of the people had had an NDE. What was remarkable was that this group was identical to the group that had not had an experience, in terms of the duration of the cardiac arrests, oxygen deprivation, as well as beliefs, prior knowledge of NDEs, fear of death, etc. All factors that researchers had initially thought might affect the experience of an NDE turned out to have no effect. Based on his research, Pim van Lommel concludes, "It's not scientific proof of life after death. But what we have been able to prove is that clear consciousness is possible when brain function has ceased. This means it's highly probable that people still have clear consciousness after bodily death. Based on these findings, we should seriously consider the possibility that death, like birth, could be just a transition to another state of consciousness." In the description of this video, I will add a link to Pim van Lommel's website, where you can find links to interviews, films about NDEs, etc. Negative experiences in NDEs are also reported by people, although these are fewer than positive experiences. These include immense regret and sorrow over the way one has lived, and some describe hell-like experiences. John Burke, author of the book Imagine Heaven, states that of the 1,000 NDEs he studied, about 23% were hell-like experiences. He notes that these experiences may be in the minority because they are perhaps shared less frequently. In our search for meaning, there are a few things we can learn from what people tell us about what they experienced during what seems to be a sneak preview of life after death. First, as Van Lommel says, the highly probable possibility that clear consciousness still exists after physical death, meaning that after death we are not finished yet. This aligns with what we know from various religions and spiritual movements, that there is indeed life after life. This raises the question of whether such religions and spiritual movements perhaps have better explanatory models for the realities of life and death than was previously thought, at least from the prevailing medical biological perspective. Second, NDEs teach us that there seems to be something so profound to learn that it makes people want to completely change their life afterwards. This is exactly what people with these experiences tell us, and these were ordinary people like you and me. What did these people realize? Can we also come to this realization? Are we focusing on the wrong things in life? If so, what should we focus on? Are we leading a good life? And what is a good life? Answering these questions is of course crucial to our search for ultimate meaning. But can we find answers to these questions? Who determines what is a good life? Do we decide that ourselves, based on our inner moral compass? Or can others tell us? And if so, who? To understand what a good life is, it's first necessary to understand what life itself is. What is existence really? How did we get here? Was there a conscious creation of life with certain goals attached to it? Or did the processes behind our life arise by chance, and must we give it meaning ourselves? In the next video, we will address these questions.